Darling, your privilege is showing.
Perhaps it's time you do something with it.
Yeah, because she needs another fan.
Come on.
Take that.
Are you done, Jeff?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Are you?
No,
we're not.
I'm just getting
Okay.
started.
Continue.
Thanks. We don't need the extravagant things in order to consider ourselves successful. Instead, what if we made our focus understanding our privileges, the things we take for granted about ourselves and our lives, and from there we figure out how to maximize what we already are for our own benefit. That's called self-mastery, and that's how I define success. Chap, you already know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk, obviously, about privilege today and this idea of unwinding what it is to be privileged, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that in our world today. So when I say the word privileged, what does that spark in you just off the bat with our cultural?
Cultural world we're living in right now. If you say, you're privileged, I'm going to get defensive, of course. I'm going to think, well, I worked hard to get to where I'm at. I mean, it's all true. You're saying, I'm, whatever, race or religion or ethnicity, whatever I am. And I'm going to get I'm going to get annoyed and okay, here we go. That's what I'm going to think.
Right.
But I know you, and I know that's not what you mean. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
Right. And what we're speaking about today is everything beyond what you would call like a survival need. That's, you've already got all the food, water, shelter met. You're doing fine for yourself. You're a functioning adult at this point. And now you're really looking into yourself and figuring out what are the things that I was either born with or have had the ability to create some sort of skill around that help me get along in the world, help me not necessarily get ahead, because it's not about just knocking other people down and getting ahead of everybody else, but it's about figuring out how to make what you already have going on for yourself work for you, right? This is really how we work smarter, not harder, to put it simply.
Maximize your skill set and the tools that you have been given.
Even whatever you were born with. And if it has to do with your skin color, it's not something to focus on being in other words, we don't want to create some sort of dissonance between people who don't have that same skin color. But if it is something that gets your foot in the door, if you're going in and doing integral work, work that feels meaningful for your life and for, if it does, then that's probably because it's in service to others, then move forward with it.
Yeah, if you're making the world a better place, and,
right.
and no matter what, your net result on the world is a big positive, or as positive as you can make it, then you're rising to that and filling that.
Exactly. You're rising to the occasion, and that's the underlying factor in this, is that your privilege actually can point you to your purpose. Your privileges are something that you should take on, I believe, you should take on as a duty to use to do whatever you're going to do with your time on this planet. And I think we have been seeing that in a really weirdly twisted way lately, where we're afraid to use anything that we're blessed with. Even looks, like I can say from being a career model, we get afraid to use our looks to get ahead in any way or get our foot in the door somewhere or something like that. We're allowed to use the things we were born with in order to have influence in the world and have impact in the world. If we don't, it's almost a disservice to those blessings that we were given.
Good point. I mean, and I know some people, or we have these thoughts of knowing these people that, maybe they're unfortunately their parents or somebody in their family died and they inherited some money, and people like to say, oh, well, if I had that, I would go buy maybe this car, this house, and I would retire and live on a beach somewhere in Bora Bora. But what's interesting is that what those people that did get that money doing? Because if the answer is they're being productive and they started a business, or they decided to rescue a bunch of animals, or doing something, well, look at that. They took something that was a privilege to them, or was a privilege to anybody, and they took it and they ran with it and they turned it into something great and not self-serving.
And such an important distinction to make, because I think people, you're just going to use, your privileges, your looks, your skin color, your born into wealth, or whatever it is that you someone might have as a privilege, and just be a power hungry monster with it, and turn into this thing that is a wrecking ball for a lot of people who don't have those privileges. The reality that I'm trying to speak to here is that if we can recognize our privileges, really looking inward, recognizing what we were gifted with, and then decide that that is something we get to be of service with to ourselves and to others, and do that in an integral way, we really have, we are successful. That is like the definition, is being able to take what we have, what we are, and serve not just ourselves, but other people around us, because that's what makes work meaningful. And that's really what seems like everyone says they're after, yet they want to like beat each other on the head and be right about everything. And, anyway, I'm going to get way distracted down that rabbit hole. So yeah, the idea though of like you're talking about here is, it's not about being this, bludgeoning, power-hungry monster with your privilege and hurting others, stepping on others in order to get somewhere. You're not stepping on other people. You're trying to raise the whole bar, the whole community up with you. And, a good example of that are first ladies of the United States. And, Princess Diana immediately comes to mind. Yeah,
I mean, who would argue that these people didn't have privilege, or they either came into privilege or they're born with privilege, whatever. But they always take something and they make something their mission, and they go out and they do stuff, they sacrifice. They don't have to do it, and they do it. And it's not about being selfless. It's always about prioritizing the self without being this narcissist, right? And that's why this show, over and over, we speak to becoming integral and getting really serious with your own inner work, so that you go into circumstances where you get these opportunities because of your privileges and you don't abuse other people with it. It's funny because this is so timely, because I read an article, and I meant to send it to you. I'm sorry, I don't think I did. Like, it was probably 2 weeks ago. And it was talking about, and this is just one or two articles, and it was some research that was done. So I don't know, who knows what weight. I'm not, advocating for it, but this is what I read, is that they took people that were sympathetic towards people that were more downtrodden. So they took people of privilege and they looked at their sympathies and not in a negative way, but positive, thoughts of, and what they were doing to help raise the less fortunate up. And what they found is the people most sympathetic to do those missions were people that were born into money versus people that made the money on their own. They found the people that made their money on their own and became very successful had a lot less sympathy for those people that are downtrodden or down on their luck than the people that were born into money. I thought that was very interesting.
So I'm sorry. So the people who were born into money
were more sympathetic in helping people of less means.
That's an interesting study. And
you know who else was that? Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. That's what he did.
He was born into money.
He was born into money. He was a prince.
And then he decided he wanted to spend his life doing it.
The Buddha's pretty cool.
So this is a fascinating aspect, I think, that we're traveling down here, this little thread we'll pull on. But the idea of when we get the platform that the generation before us built, not that we get it handed to us in an entitled way, which we've heard that word
plenty
over
of people
and over.
Right? We've plenty of those people, right?
Yeah. But and right now, the new generation, Gen Z and even millennials, the word entitlement is everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's overused.
It's overused at this point. But the idea is that as humans, we want to create a platform for our children, of course, the next generation, right? Or for the people coming after us. We want to leave that legacy for them to climb on top of and be better because of. And there is a slippery slope, Chap. You and I talked about it the other day regarding another article you sent me, but where as weak men continue, as strong men become stronger, they make the world easier for the next generations, which create weaker men. And as men weaken, and it's not just men, but humans.
Society weakens.
And what we're talking about is nervous system strengthening, weakening when we're talking about this. But then, they create a platform to make it easier for the next generation. Then we end up with weaker men and weaker humans. And then eventually that cycle turns back around again, because the entitlement and the easiness of life gets too easy. And humans were actually built to climb. That's what I like to say. We're built to climb mountains. And so if we're not on our way climbing, we're sitting at the top of a mountain, that's great for a moment because we got there. How fantastic. And the climb was, the journey is what it's all about. We got to the top, but then we're looking for the next thing to climb because that's what we do. We don't want to just sit and turn into mush. You know,
could you imagine humanity if all we had was these mountains to climb and that's all we had? That's pretty cool. I climbed a mountain. I've never climbed a mountain, but I mean, climbing a mountain is, you know, I would be very proud of that. But as humanity, if all we had were mountains to climb and we didn't have outer space or the moon or Mars or these other things, we keep desiring to keep going and going and going and solving problems. That's what we like to do is solve problems.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm not saying, I'm saying theoretically.
Right. No, I got it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm kind of simple. I have a fan down here that I get hot from intimidation.
Fabulous. Wonder who threw that at you earlier. But this is something I talk about a lot, the modern man, and I use that terminology actually synonymously with the privileged man. I use the modern man because it seems to go over a lot more well with people than the privileged man. But modern man is privileged because why? Because we've stood on the shoulders of our forefathers and those before them who have been building and, you know, were the strong men who are humans that we got this beautiful platform, you know, created for us. And now we're here and there's a lot of weakening that's happened through us getting it handed down. And it does create an entitlement factor. So it's important for us to not fall into the entitlement trap by recognizing our privileges and working from that place of, okay, you know what? I have had this platform built for me. How do I continue to strengthen myself and grow myself instead of believe that everything's supposed to be handed to me, and if it's not, then I'm just pissed off, and I'm going to start pointing fingers and canceling people, and you know, getting into that whole spiel of if it's not working for me, then it's working against me. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
if it's not working for you, it's a chance to learn and grow and.
Well, life's supposed to be a challenge anyway.
Yeah.
It's figuring out problem solving the challenge. I mean, imagine how much fun movies would be or books or video games if you already could just cut right forward to the ending of it. It would be pretty boring and we wouldn't want to read it or watch it because it's about the struggle and the journey. And so I think that if we recognize, like you're saying, if we recognize that we are already in really good shape individually in this society, the modern society, not just the United States, but modern society, and we build upon that and not, you know, bring other people down or put other people down, then that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, you know, one of the questions I get most often on my workshop and my social media is about purpose and direction, and guys wanting to know, like, how do I discover that for myself? And I think this conversation is such an indicator of how to do that, and it is allowing your privilege to lead you to your purpose. If you can start focusing on what you do have for yourself instead of shaming yourself for being born into a good situation, which I notice a lot of people doing these days. Like, we believe we're not allowed to show our privileges. You're allowed to show all of your privileges. Just do something with it, you know, just use it for the betterment of yourself and others. And I think if that intention is at the forefront, you've actually discovered what you're here to do. And
because you can do nothing. I mean, if you've got too much privilege, you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to, but that's boring. No one wants to live a life like that.
And the fact that you do, I mean, the fact that you're tuning in, you're already there. I mean, You're already in that direction, so it's easy to talk to those people. But if you have this privilege that we have, but then you have maybe even more because you've won the lottery, you've inherited something, or you just got really good at a job, a corporate buyout, whatever it is. You might sit on a beach, honestly, you might sit on a beach for 3 or 4 months, and then it's going to bore you so much, you're going to have to get into something.
Right.
And if it's for the betterment of either your family, your society, your city, your world, then you're awesome. You're an awesome person.
Well, and you're an awesome person no matter what you do, as long as you're trying to grow, you know, because we all start from somewhere. But it is kind of fun that you bring up the point of like sitting on a beach. I think everyone, I just want to win the lotto and, you know, sit on a beach sipping margaritas.
You don't.
You get a few days into that, you know, maybe 3 weeks, let's say tops, you get into that and you're looking around like, what the hell else is there to do? Again, we're built to climb. We don't want to just sit stagnantly sipping margaritas, turning into lushes on the beach. It's not in our DNA. We're here to rise, you know? So.
Well, and there's people that I, you know, invented some internet company that went global and I became a billionaire. And guess what? I'm going to go ahead and just go into space because that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, like people do that.
Yeah, because
like,
we want to progress. Our duty here, as far as I can understand, is to figure out how to propel and progress this species forward. That's what we're built into our genes.
Yeah, it's just like this could be everybody in the era that we're living in, and we're in 2022.
Yeah.
And whatever year it is. And so, everybody is, let's take this, we're talking about privilege and we're talking about some reflection here. And this is something that, everybody, because the news or whatever it is, everybody thinks the world's falling apart, the world's going to end tomorrow, politically, war, whatever it is. But in reality, it's not. And in reality, it's like you're going to be fine. Like if you keep progressing forward towards this goal of your own problem and you're moving forward, it's just like
I think what you're speaking to is that it's like a pseudo identity of the activist, where they want to have a meaningful life. We've talked about this too recently. They want to have this meaningful life. And they want to have meaningful work. And so, a lot of young people right now creating a reason to be an activist about and get angry about and show up. And I'm gonna be the one, the whistleblower on this situation.
Yeah, I'm going to save the universe or whatever.
I'm going to save the universe, which is such a, that's a dynamic
That's awesome.
concept.
It's awesome, but who's
is
going to pay
it?
the price for it or whatever?
Because they haven't decided to look inward at all. They're just externally pointing at things and saying, you make me uncomfortable and you make me uncomfortable, so you shouldn't exist. Instead of, let's talk about what your perspective is and come to a conversation that actually gets us somewhere together. Because as much as you want to abandon the other humans that aren't on your echo chamber, you can't, because we all have to share this planet together.
It's I didn't know you were going to go this direction. I'm happy to, but it's, in a way you could say it's a solution in search of a problem. It's that, but it's a failure to recognize the wonderful trait that humans have, and that is called adaptability. And when I was younger, I'm Gen X, but when I was younger, it was really like, the world doesn't really care about you, buddy. You have to adapt to the world. So you have to find your kind of place and niche in the world, and you have to adapt to the world and make yourself as good as you can be, operating under the rules that the world sets forth for you.
Right.
So
and
you have to adapt to the world.
And that can be, you can go to one extreme or the other in this,
but
right?
I feel like now we're making the world adapt to us. Isn't that how we destroying the world, is we're making the world adapt to us?
Yes, because it's the other extreme where somewhere in the middle is
somewhere in the middle is
fine.
Sense. And you're allowed to have dissenters and pro and anti, and that's all fine because it's good discussion. But you and I have talked about this a lot, and when it's all fun and these things are really good to talk about for the activists and the anti-activists and the pros and the cons and all this. But when there's something going on that we do really need to work on, like, there's a big war brewing, or like there is a mega asteroid or whatever that the world has to deal with, we'll deal with it. I mean, the world gets together.
When we are truly a victim,
yes,
it's makes sense to scream, I'm a victim, I need help out of this, right? And that's what you're speaking to. When there's real catastrophe happening in the world,
you'll know it,
it won't be questionable.
Right.
But when we are too quick to scream, the boy who cried wolf, when we're too quick to cry wolf, we can't even trust ourselves anymore.
No.
Because if we're over here hiding from the shit we need to actually look at and decide if it's true and figure out what really we need to take responsibility for, we're avoiding that and hiding it, and we're instead blaming other people and asking them to fix it for us, we're in a real dangerous zone, because now we have abandoned ourselves and can't even trust our own center.
Yeah, and I feel like every generation, to some degrees, has their own cause, their own fight. And my grandparents were the World War II era, and their job was winning against the Nazis.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty noble cause. Okay. They did it. They won. That's their generation. My parents were with the Vietnam War. It was like, women's rights, civil rights movement. And that was a battle. They fought well, and they won that battle. When it was my generation, Gen X, it was like the Soviet Union, nuclear war. It was like, oh my God. And we just had to find our place in the world. But I feel like, again, we're in this scenario now that we're that problem, that we're the solution and looking for the problem again. And then maybe there's really not a big one, or maybe there is, I don't know. But you're right. It's this activism for the point of being an activist. That's like, all you're doing is you're picking at like your fingernails. Now they're starting to bleed. Now you need to go to the doctor, get antibiotics. And they're saying, by the way, you might lose your finger because now you got MRSA.
Right.
How about just like not
stop picking on your nails?
Stop picking on your nails and worry about something a little more, for you that you can control, that's more productive.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to try to delve into the world of where the real, the sympathies. I'm being a little more generalistic about it, of course. But we're not picking on one type of people. We're basically, it's everybody that has the, and people have this fight inside. I mean, the fight's good. It's spirit. It's drive.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. It's the directing of it, though.
We need to be clear on when we're really being transgressed, or when we're just reacting to being confronted with something that actually feels true. And the easy way to do that is to feel when we're triggered, when our nervous system is upset. We sit down with it and figure out if that upsetness is actually indicating something we need to reconsider, come up and, be honest about, instead of duck and hide and blame, send bombs over that way. Like, it's your fault. You figure it out. And
it's easy to go on the offensive. I mean, it's easy to just,
the easiest route.
It's your bad. I had an admiralty professor, and I remember he went through like the stages of like anger or whatever it was. And one of them was "you're bad." And I'm like, that's so funny because but you're bad. You're the bad one.
It's you who's
You're bad. And he was using that as like, don't use that argument in, your legal case or whatever. You're bad. It's like, I mean, sometimes if they're bad, but it's like, oh no, you're bad. It's like, I'm not even going to think to analyze my own weakness of my case.
Right.
I'm just going to blame you.
Exactly.
And we see that in litigation.
Nowhere.
Yeah. In law, I mean, thank God I'm not practicing anymore, but you see that, oh, you're bad. Okay. Just cause whatever, but let me ask you this idea of, okay, let's assume that we're watching this, that yes, we all have our individual privileges, some varying degrees. Mm-hmm. How do we use that in a relationship, a new relationship? Is that something that we should be aware of that, obviously? Have you thought about how that might affect a new relationship, or how you might be able to use that as a strength in a relationship? Using your knowledge of a privilege that you have.
And again, life is only about relationships. So when you use your privileges, it's for the sake of
right.
any relationship, whether, it doesn't have to be romantic if that's what you're speaking to, but any privilege that you decide to use, because that's what it was given to you for, you're doing that in service to other people, whether like, the conversation you were just having, or the topic you were just touching on a moment ago of blaming other people and just deciding someone else is bad, mm-hmm. and letting it lie where it is such a scapegoat way to do this. But it's when we realize, and this is going to get a little esoteric, leave it to me to do that, but it's realizing that everybody we look at, every reflection, every person we stand in front of, we're just looking into a mirror, because our experience is completely subjective, each one of us, right? Mm-hmm. So when I stand in front of you, what I notice happening in conjunction, in the relationship between us is all mine to note. It literally is only me noticing it in this particular way I do, because I'm having a subjective experience of every person I come in contact with.
Because that's all you have.
From my domestications, my conditioning, whatever makes me uniquely me. And as I do that and I absorb the reflection that you give me, for instance, and anyone else I come in contact with, I get to see, that's where I can give this person a reflection back. This is how my privilege serves in the world, so that I keep getting to see myself being reflected. And this is where it gets really esoteric. Why the hell would we want to do that? Because we do. The proof is in the pudding. We do this. We go out. We're social beings. What drives us to be social? We want to connect. We want to procreate. We want to have this human experience and extend it, and even see that generations will continue it on for us. And why the hell do we do this? And this is the esoteric piece, is because we're essentially, you can put it in whatever your terms are, depending on what philosophy you believe in or don't. But, I'll say the universe is attempting to witness itself through us, or the divine, I would probably use that term instead, is attempting to witness itself through this human vessel. And so when I go and I have a conversation with Chap, and you say something back to me, you're reflecting a lot of only me back to me, because it's just what I'm receiving and what I'm letting in, right? So when you talk about privilege and using your privileges in your relationships, that's literally, that's the highest service we can perform in relationships, is to get really aware of our gifts, of our privileges, of the things that make us strong and positive beings of light.
Fulfilling the other people in your life.
So that you can keep having reflective humans in your life, so that you can keep building connection, because that's what the divine is asking you to do. And that's why we keep getting called back to have relationships. That's why we get triggered in relationships. That's why all the shit that we sift through happens through other people, because they're just us looking in the mirror, essentially. And that might seem too narcissistic or selfish for a lot of people to understand.
No, but it's true, because it's the observer, and it's like a physics thing. It's like quantum mechanics. Yeah. It's the observer is the one, like the Schrodinger's cat. It's the observer who has the field separated, or positive or negative spin, or whatever it is. It's the observer's, once it's observed, this thing happens. And so if I wasn't, if I wasn't observing, or, observing your communication to me, and I'm not, talking back with you about it, it's only my understanding of what you're saying to me that is in my world. So you have to understand in your world, but she's thinking the same thing. Like, you're your own subjective being, and you're looking at me, and and it's kind of like he keeps going, and it's really weird. It's kind of like
it's a mind
messes with your mind.
This is an existential rabbit hole for sure.
But it's beautiful.
Go down it
because it's gorgeous.
Stop doing the avoid dance, dancing around the void, and step into it when it invites you. Like,
and it's really weird if you stop and think about it, as I sit here with you, if you stop and think about it, is that there is another living thing just like you in her body.
Right.
And we're talking about something, and it's efficient, and we're getting a message across, and that is like, if you think of the way that actually works chemically, it's really weird. It almost should not work.
It's wild, and I think it's so helpful to recognize human to human as nervous systems communicating, because now we can see ourselves as closer to what the soul might be like, the thing that needs to have some sort of assistance to know itself, and it's vibrational, because you can tell whenever you're nervous. Literally, that's a great way,
the waves out of your brain.
Nervous systems, Right. You can feel the shakiness in your body. It's a vibration. And so when you get into contact with people who you feel calm around, that's largely because even if they don't know it, maybe they know it or not, they are essentially lending their nervous system to you. And that is also a privilege when you recognize it, that you can do for people. You can sit with them, and when they say things that are very scary for them to let out of their system, to let out of their mouth, and to let through this vessel that they call their body, they feel shaky to do it. And if you can sit there and hold it, this is what we call like holding space, right? You are essentially lending your nervous system so that they can finally work through something that was too hard and shaky for the nervous system to hold for so long. This is what we call trauma, and this is the experience of people who are in complex traumas and deep traumas where they can't seem to touch that, and so they just keep escaping through, all kinds of ways, drugs, alcohol, and everything else. But that point is to bring awareness to the part of you as a little human, meat suit that has this really cool piece of technology in there called the nervous system that has an exchange with other beings, and get in tuned with that part. And as you do, and that's what we focus on so much on this show, Chap, is like getting in tune with that internal part. And we call it the nervous system, sometimes the soul. We call it remembering this, the parts of the psyche. We call that integration, or remembering the parts of the psyche. And all those factors are for creating this this understanding of self, nervous system, soul, whatever you want to call it, so that you can realize, oh, I have all these cool ass privileges, and from that place, I get to actually use them in communication with others, in relationships, and building from there.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. So what do we have? I mean, what do we, what's our kind of like our
takeaway from this?
Yeah, takeaway from it. I have a lot of takeaway, but
okay, I want to know yours.
My takeaway is we're all part of the same system. And we're all very
one.
We are very
seems
similar.
So cheesy,
yeah,
but.
We are one. And there's been science that talks about this in a lot of, and they're getting more and more to discover that it is indeed the case. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, the person that you're talking with is not just like you, but biologically, they're basically you. I mean, with very little deviation.
And this is, the namaste bow that gets
love
popular.
Your brother and sister.
Well, love your brother and sister or love your, people in your world as if they were brother and sister, or as close as you possibly can love somebody. And namaste means essentially the divine in me bows to the divine in you, or the God in me sees the God in you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, and so that idea of we are all God in his myriad of disguises is so critical to continue to understand. This is what we're experiencing, is just God, the universe, source, trying to see itself and experience itself through our eyes. There's this, I don't know what this quote is from, but essentially it says, God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. What is he lacking? And the answer is essentially definition, limitations.
Physical limitation. Yeah.
Something that would show him his uniqueness in all the different facets. And that's what we do as human vessels with consciousness, in my opinion, is that we essentially allow God to see, or source to see, or universe to see itself and experience itself in all these different unique facets that each of us as individuals create for him. I'm going to finish this little rant and we'll sign off here. But just to give that a visual as well, there is this visual that was, I think it was given to me through a book that I cannot recall at the moment. But essentially, it's this idea of uniqueness where we're, actually, I think it's from Mark Gaffney's work, just to give him credit, because I know so much of his influence is probably coming through this conversation right now. The idea is that we're all puzzle pieces, let's say. And so you set a puzzle piece in place, and when you do a puzzle, you know how that looks, and you set all the little pieces of human puzzle pieces in place, and it makes this grand, beautiful piece of art that the puzzle is, looks like when you put it all together. And each of our purposes, through our privilege and through our human vessel that we're here to perform during our time, if we so choose, and hopefully we do, will be the definition that shows that little piece. Now, the definition is only kind of surface level, because actually we're all one melded piece of artwork, right? But each of us have a little carving in a puzzle piece formation that fits particularly in this spot on the puzzle. And when you look at the grand thing, it is God, and it is the universe, it is the infinity of existence or whatever. And it's absolutely stunning. And if we, as one of those puzzle pieces, do not decide to take on our duty to essentially perform through our privileges and bring our unique definition as the piece that fits in that particular place, what a bummer, because we got to wait for that to come around through some other incarnation, So you might as well take the time and energy you have in this lifetime to perform through your privileges and let God have this experience of seeing itself as this beautiful puzzle that only your definition can complete.
And our job we're going to look at the main camera here, because our job for you is to keep subscribing and liking and viewing and doing everything you can, because if we have enough money, we're going to do an episode from Tibet. And we're going to go
from the mountaintop?
From the mountaintop in Tibet, because that's where I think we should be.
Oh. After this combo?
Well, maybe not after this one, but after certainly
We'll
other
see
ones.
where our privileges bring
I'd like
us.
to. I already have the bald head, so I've already. No, I'm. No, but I will say
I don't know
this.
how I will look in a monk's
There
robe.
was a.
I wouldn't be using my
don't know.
privilege.
There was a something I watched. I don't remember, and it was brilliant. It was about Buddhism, and they recognized the Buddha and everybody, and she goes around and she says, Buddha, 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 and everybody's the Buddha, and so that's kind of. I mean, I like Buddhism if you haven't heard, but if you haven't figured that out, but anyway, but please, let's sign off by saying what? We're all
This is
part
going smoothly.
Yeah, this is
Going
great.
smoothly.
Okay, cut.
All right,
No.
y'all. Through all the rambling, if this gave you some good info, please share it with your friends, families, and maybe even the people you don't like so much. Maybe it'll invite them to soften. And I want to remind you, as always, you already are.